Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
We want to thank Bee Culture Magazine for their continuing presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture has been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today, and while you're there, check out Bee Culture's Beekeeping Your First 3 Years, a quarterly magazine for beginning beekeepers. We also want to thank 2 Million Blossoms as sponsor of this episode. 2 Million Blossoms is a new quarterly magazine dedicated to protecting all pollinator insects, both wild and managed, before they disappear. The magazine is full of beautiful photos and informative articles from authors such as Dr. Marla Spivak, Dr. Mark Winston, and our very own Kim Flatham. Learn more on our Season 2, Episode 9 podcast with editor Kirsten Trainer, and from visiting www.2millionblossoms.com, and that's with a number 2. Hey, Kim, we got a great podcast episode scheduled for today. And in a little bit, we'll be talking with Matt Beekman of the Sioux Honey Association Co-op. And I'm sure all of our beekeepers are aware of Sioux or Sioux Honey, but not quite sure just who they are. Today, we open the door to that long-established cooperative. But before we get to Sioux, we have a couple other things to talk about first.
Well, hi, Jeff. Good to see you again. Well, first, you and I have been talking about doing book reviews because in our industry, Bee Culture is the only magazine that's ever done a book review that wasn't done by the publisher, and they tend to be a little bit one-sided.
No.
But we're going to start doing book reviews on these every once in a while, okay. And I've got a stack of them right here. You want to?
Yes.
Should we give a hint of what we got? We got one coming up called "Bee People and the Bugs They Love" by Frank Mortimer. I've got a good one, and we did this one a bit ago, but it's The Land of Milk and Honey, A History of Beekeeping in Vermont by Bill Mahers and Ross Conner.
All right.
Ross used to write for us in Bee Culture.
Yeah.
Bill Mahers has been a longtime friend, and he's done a lot of writing and NPR radio work over the years. Raising Honeybee Queens by Giles Furt, one of Jeremy Burbridge's people, Northern Bee Books. And I got one here I ran into. I've never seen a book how to start a bee club.
Oh wow!
And it's I don't know the lady, but I've been through the book, and it's got a lot of good advice if you're thinking of getting started. I got a whole stack of them here, Jeff, but I think just a short review every once in a while on the show, I think would probably be a good idea.
I think so too. That's a great idea, Kim. Thanks. There's a lot of stuff going on in the news lately, and it's going to affect all of our bee meetings and any kind of socials that might be going on. This COVID-19 is I can't think of anything more descriptive than crazy right now. I'm looking forward to it.
Crazy.
It is. Hopefully it'll all settle down and to a steady roar, but I'm sure there are many April and May beekeeping meetings that have been canceled.
Well, they're even talking into June and July now.
Yeah.
It's St. Patty's Day when we're doing this, and I was listening to the Powers of Bee this morning, and they're talking summertime before this might begin to settle down. So it's hard telling what's going to happen.
Well, and it's especially important to many of our listeners because I have not seen the statistics. Maybe the average age of a beekeeper is probably approaching that target demographic that being affected by COVID-19.
Yeah, we're all old, Jeff.
Well, I'm kind of in the gray area on the south side of that. But
Well, good luck to you.
But in all honesty, of course, Sherry's mom, who's 101, lives with us, and because she's with us, we're being extra cautious, making sure we don't bring anything home. We've got her
right.
We've got her this far, and hate to have anything happen to her at this point. Anyways, on to bigger and better things, I think.
I hear you went up to Seattle.
Yeah, I did. Peter Nelson. Remember Peter Nelson from last year? He did the movie The Pollinators.
The movie, yes.
Yes, a friend of the podcast.
I saw him at Apamundia, and he was running full speed in one direction, and I was running in the other direction, but we got to smile and wave, and then he was at I guess he got a good reception at the American Beekeeping Federation meeting in January.
Yeah, and it's well-deserved. So he was in town showing the film at, I should know. It's one of the scientific organizations with a lot of letters in the name, ASSSS or something like that, American Society of Scientific Scholars. I don't know. Sorry, Peter, I butchered that. Anyways, so Peter was in town, and I jumped on the train, went up and talked to him, and recorded it. So here's a little audio postcard from Peter Nelson. It's great fun to be here in this fancy hotel lobby with my guest, Peter Nelson. Peter Nelson, welcome back. How is the pollinators going?
I should first say that this fancy lobby is not where I'm staying. But yeah, it's going great. We're here in Seattle. We're showing the film at the AAAS, which is the American Association for the Advancement of Science. They asked us to screen the film, which is quite a thrill and an honor.
Wow, that is. You've been doing this quite a bit all around the country, haven't you? It's been busy since you were on the show last.
Yeah, it's been nonstop, which we're really grateful for. We've been doing a lot of theatrical screenings, and then we're moving into community screenings and bringing it around to universities and botanical gardens and eco-farming conferences, and it's just been great. We're having a blast with it.
And the reception's been through the roof.
It's been amazing. People are just really responding to it. I think our timing has been very good with this issue about bees, that everybody knows there's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's connecting a lot of dots for people about their food system and about our food system and the problems with bees, and it's connecting a lot of dots with people about our food system and where the food comes from and the importance of managed honeybees to it.
It is, and the thing that really stands out in the movie that has stuck with me ever since I saw it was the whole consideration of soil health, and you focused on a good portion of the film on that, and I think that is so important.
Yeah, it's not a natural thing when you think about, I think, connecting bees to soil, but they are really important. They're so closely related to the health of the soil, and the diversity of the landscape and what people grow on that landscape is so essential to bees. And it's not just managed honeybees; it's all pollinators.
Yeah. Well, it's a fabulous film, and I'm so glad to see that it has legs, that it's still continuing and still very popular.
Yeah, we're having a really good time with it, and we're pushing out to expanding the theatrical screenings and the community screenings. And we're putting a big push on to screen across the country on the week of Earth Day this year, which is April 22nd. And it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is kind of hard to believe. But we're looking at that as a great time to kind of look at the film and get people talking about some of these issues.
Very good. So how do people find out where to see the film?
Yeah, so you can always go to thepollinators.net, which is our website, and on there we can connect either to, if you want to go to see the film through a theatrical screening or a community screening, we can do that through Demand Film, and we always have a list of where it's playing. We're still doing a few film festivals, but then also we will have these community screenings, and that'll be a list that'll be there what's coming up, and maybe in your community, whatever state it's in, is where we'll organize it.
Yeah, very cool. And if someone wants to sponsor you to come into their community, how do they do that?
They do it the same way, or you can just always reach out to the pollinators.net, or I'm always happy to talk to people, and we're having a great time going around talking about the film and meeting people, whether beekeepers or farmers or gardeners. We're just having a great time with it.
Well, it's a great film, and for the listeners, if you have not yet seen it, I encourage you to go out to pollinators.net to find out where the film is showing near you, and or contact Peter through pollinators.net and get it into your neighborhood. It'll be well worth your time and energy.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to meet you in person too.
Yeah, it's really good. And thanks for lunch. I really enjoyed it. All right. Thanks a lot, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Now I wonder if any of that recorded.
Hey, it was good to see Peter again. I'm glad he's doing well. And for all of our listeners, you get a chance to listen to this, make it a point, because it's going to be worth your time.
I absolutely agree, and he does it. The film is wonderfully photographed and great, well edited. It's a really good film. Well, we have coming up our main guest, Matt Beekman of Sioux Honey Association Cooperative.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this because I know enough about Sioux to be really curious, but not enough that I'm anywhere near an expert at it. I'm looking to learn a lot from Matt, and he's in the middle of almond pollination as we're talking to him on this, and he's going to share a little bit. He kind of hinted he'd like to share a little bit about that. So, Sioux Honey and almond pollination. I think from a beekeeper's perspective, how could you get more interesting?
Let's do it. Hey, Matt, welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's good to see you, Matt.
Good seeing you.
I understand you are, as we're recording this, in the middle of almond pollination, and knowing the chaos that's going on out there, we really appreciate you taking the time out to come and visit with us.
Oh, right on.
Matt, you're with the Sioux Honey Association Co-op, and I'm sure most, if not everybody on listening today, knows about at least seeing Sioux Honey on the shelves. Talk to us about the association and who Sioux Honey is and why they exist.
All right. Yeah, happy to talk about that. Sioux Honey is in 2021 will be, I think, our 100-year anniversary. So we've been around a long time. We're approximately 250 members in virtually all 50 states of the United States. And we pool our honey and market it together. Is essentially, in our base of operations is Sioux City, Iowa. That's the name, Sioux Honey.
And what brands, when we're looking at store shelves, what brands is Sioux sold under? Brand names?
Some of the recent brands, we had a Beaks line that we just recently launched. We have Aunt Sioux is another fairly new product line. And then there are, I think, Sioux Bee generic labels. I think that's about it. I may be wrong about that, but most of it.
I think you got Aunt. Do you still have Aunt Sue sitting on the shelf out there?
Yes, that's still around too.
Yeah. Okay. And this beak is that is new. I've just learned about this reading up on you a little bit. That's a local raw product from California.
Correct, and it's marketed specific to each beekeeper. So, for example, in California, we have, I think, Jim Oakley down in Southern California, David Bradshaw, my cousin Brian Beekman. They submitted honey, and then they bottled it specifically to them to really highlight the regional aspects and the varietal aspects of honey.
Well, so it's kind of neat. You also have Spun Honey, right? Do you still have that?
Yes, yeah, which I'm a super big fan of. Yeah, Spun Honey, creamed honey. I actually make some of it for myself. I like it so much. If you produce honey in the Midwest, it crystallizes really fast, so it's a good thing to do.
I'll tell you a secret, Jeff. There's Spun Honey that makes a good seed for me. If you're going to make your own Spun Honey, I get theirs to use as seed because they do a good job of crystal size.
Exactly.
So it works well. So if I'm a beekeeper and I've joined Sioux Bee, how does the season work? What can I expect, and what do they expect from me?
Basically, one of the reasons why I got into Sioux was the predictability aspect of it, knowing that I have a client for all of my production, and how my season starts is, a lot of years we'll produce honey in California and North Dakota. So really it's just a matter of making the product, ensure that we have the barrels or totes. And we're in a situation where we're extracting it. We get a whole truckload and they come pick it up in a pretty timely manner. And then we're paid over the course of the next fiscal year in quarterly payments, essentially. And they're very responsive. There's always someone answering the phone. And it's most beekeepers know marketing your product can be kind of an iffy situation. I like to joke that the honey market isn't always fluid. There's not always a ready buyer. But when you're a co-op member, you're producing your product and you're getting it shipped, and you're getting paid in a fairly timely manner.
Well, it makes sleeping at night a little easier, I'll bet.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of ifs in the bee industry, and having to sit on multi-years worth of product waiting for a buyer can put you in a tough situation. Such a cash flow intensive business, capital intensive business, and having that consistency is really a value.
Yeah, I can see where the quarterly payments or as a known quantity would be really nice to be able to depend on.
Up until just recently, I was working for the AI Root Candle Company, and they relied a lot on the beeswax that they got from Sioux Bee. It was always a good product, predictable, good price. So does all of your honey and does all of your beeswax all go to Sioux Bee, or is there some that you market in other locations?
In terms of honey, the vast majority goes to Sioux. We do have essentially a farm stand at our place. As a Sioux member, you can market your honey at your facility. And that just largely stems from the fact that my grandfather started selling honey off his back shelf. This would probably have gone back to the 40s. And so over that period of time, we've developed some clientele. And so we do market a small amount of honey that way. But from the honey, most of it, other than that, it all goes to Sioux.
And the same with the wax?
Beeswax, some goes to Sioux. I can take some to Man Lake or Date for a store credit too.
For supplies. Okay.
Right.
Well, how do I join? Okay, I've got 4 colonies out in the backyard. Can I join Sioux Bee?
You can try, but basically the way I did it is I filled out an application. I think it took them about a year and a half to accept my application. In terms of what criteria they use or how many members they accept, I really don't know that. I think largely depends on the honey market, if they need honey or not. And that's just the basic process.
Looking at the honey market over time, not just this year or last year, but over time, some years there's a glut and some years there's not. And so Sioux Bee will take your honey no matter what, and then they take the responsibility for getting it sold?
That's correct.
Well, that seems like from a beekeeper's perspective, a pretty, and it's going to come down to, I guess, a competitive market. Honey still is a competitive market, so the price must be worth working with them so that what you get in the end keeps you in business.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal for sure. Yeah.
I'm impressed with that. When going back to the beginning, when you first started, if I recall, talking to someone a long time ago, you being Sioux Bee, were also selling supplies, weren't you, to your members?
That may have been prior to me joining.
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago.
I know. Doesn't Bee Made do that in Canada? They're a co-op too. But yeah, I'm not aware of that. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Well, you don't anymore, so it's kind of a moot point. But I know a lot of agriculture co-ops work that way. We sell you the product, you sell the product to them, and they sell their supplies back to you. Kind of at a since they can buy in bulk, they can sell it to you back to you at a good price for the members. So
okay.
Anyway, so you said you've got members in all 50 states.
Don't quote me on that, but we have a lot of members all over the United States.
Okay. Well, you said 250 plus members, so
right.
You must be working for you pretty well.
How many pounds does the co-op produce annually?
That's a good question. I think the long-term average is around 60 million pounds.
What else do beekeepers need to know about Sioux bees so that they can talk if somebody asks them, other than, yeah, you can see it on the grocery store shelf?
Sioux bee has a pretty narrow focus, and I think their ultimate goal is just being consistently marketing our product. And to me, consistency is the ultimate indicator of success. And when you're pushing 100 years, that's quite a successful track record.
It is. I thought you started in 1921. Well, any members in Canada? Are you international?
There might be some. I don't know any specifically, but the vast majority of the vast majority of members are American. There might be one or two but it's possible, but I'm not sure. To be honest with you.
Okay, all right. Well, I was looking at your webpage and the maps on your webpage and North Dakota, it seems to be pretty much a lot of you have got a lot of beekeepers in North Dakota.
Yeah. North Dakota is the largest honey producing state in the United States, and it just makes sense for us to be a lot of guys up there.
And you're located in California all year?
No, I run bees in California, and then we go to North Dakota too.
Like a lot of people.
Yeah, you have to be migratory in this business to make it work.
Yes, you do. Well, one of the things that, as I was looking at what you guys do, is looking to branch out a little bit. I have no idea if you're planning to do this, but with this many members producing this much honey and this many bees, is Sioux Bee thinking of looking into doing something, getting into the bee market?
In terms of marketing queens, or
well, all of the above, queens or nukes or packages or I'm not sure. I mean, you guys have a lot of bees. If you've got that many members,
right?
It would seem to me to be something that you could be working towards as a group,
right?
But I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have not heard of any discussions regarding that. I think it's the kind of the desire of the members to really keep that focus narrow.
Yeah.
Marketing a product and getting on shelves and managing inventory effectively and things like that. To do it right requires a lot of attention and detail and focus. And you start branching into other things, I think it brings its own set of problems.
Is it all packed in Sioux City?
There's Sioux City. There's also a packing facility in Anaheim, right down the street from Disneyland.
Nice.
Is there one on the East Coast?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
My experience has been with, out of North Dakota with the Sioux City facility, and in California with the Anaheim facility.
Okay. You produce, you sell, you don't produce, an organic honey that comes from Brazil, which I guess if you're going to compete in the market, you got to have everything everybody else does, right?
That's the way I look at it. That's my understanding. You have a clientele. You hate to, have them go somewhere else for your business, and to, meet the needs from that full spectrum of what they want is kind of the challenge.
Yep.
Why can't organic be produced in the United States?
It's a good question. Just to get the conditions to make that possible are very difficult. My own experience, I looked at it because I'm in a fortunate situation where we have some areas that would be possible. And I talked with, I guess that at that time was CCOF, was the California agency. And basically I'd have to start with completely new woodenware. I don't think I was able to paint it. I couldn't be around even a golf course. There were the conditions were just almost nearly impossible to meet at any kind of fiscal, financial viable level.
If I'm correct, and I may not be, but I think the Upper Peninsula of Michigan may be one of the few locations in the U.S. to qualify to produce organic honey because they are so isolated up there.
I never considered that. That's really interesting.
It's tough. No,
even
it's
in
impossible.
California, you have a lot of open ground, even in the Central Coast area that you could possibly do, but then the compliance aspect of it was just so onerous. It was just not realistic.
How many colonies do you run, Matt?
I run about 4,000.
So my 4 colonies in my backyard probably aren't going to have compete much with you in terms of doing 4,000. How many people you got working with you?
5.
5 people working
Yeah.
4,000 colonies. That's a full day.
Yeah, it's I'm fortunate to have the guys that I have. We have a pretty good crew, and on many days they outwork me, so it's a good thing.
Are all 4,000 of them in almonds right now?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, no, we're ground zero. I mean, I'm talking to you right now from Houston, California, and we're kind of on the east edge of Stanislaus County, and we're ground zero for almonds. I would say within a 60-mile radius of our facility, we're probably pushing 400,000 acres of almonds.
How is this season going this year so far?
It's been a really interesting season. The bloom came on pretty fast. We've had almost little to no rain, and so the conditions for pollination are perfect. So the shake is unreal. Some of my highs just around our facility here. I was checking yesterday, and I bet you these things put on 20 pounds in the last week. It's extraordinary. And usually you put bees in almond pollination, they bring in a ton of pollen, but I mean, you're talking about hives are just plugged out with pollen, bottom and top. Swarming is going to be an issue if we don't get on top of it. We shake bees and raise queens, so we like to see that. But you cannot ask for better conditions than what we're experiencing right now. So it's really neat.
So both beekeepers and growers are happy this season, at least so far.
It should be. Honestly, the only downside to it that I see right now is the possibility of just producing too big of an almond crop. The thing about almonds is the vast majority of them are exported overseas, and you give the instability in the international market right now. It's a little bit concerning. Can the international market absorb 2.6 billion pounds of almonds? That's what we're looking at for potential production this year.
That's incredible. Wow.
It's really the almond story. Our family, we farm some almonds too, and it's quite extraordinary. California agriculture is phenomenal at ruining a good thing, and almonds, for whatever reason, seems to be the one crop that California agriculture has not ruined yet. There's such a strong competitive advantage to growing almonds, in the Central Valley in terms of the conditions. There are some X variables like water that are always on the forefront and always dealing with, but just the natural conditions, the supportive industries that have popped up around almonds, and then California has always been a really good honey, or at least a beekeeping area. The queen producers up north, and there's a lot of honey production in Southern California. So it's they've kind of grown up together.
I know one of the things that's been being looked at by growers and by beekeepers and by researchers out there is providing forage for bees before the bloom, and then between rows of trees during bloom.
Right.
Are your bees in the middle of any of that?
This year I haven't. I've had some other growers where we've seen it most applicable is on a new orchard. So like typically they'll put bees in an orchard when they're third leaf, so essentially the third going on the fourth year. So they haven't had to harvest the prior year, so they can get in and plant that cover crop in the fall and get it irrigated. And that's actually worked really well. Going back, I had one account that had this, I don't know, it was about an 800 acre orchard. And I actually talked them into planting rapini in this orchard.
Oh,
and I think that's part of the seed mix now for the PAM. And that, just from a beekeeper experience, it was magic. It was really interesting. And there's a definite value to providing those alternative sources of pollen and nectar. And I think the one thing that gets lost in, it definitely helps the bees, but there's also a environmental aspect to it. And I'll never forget in this orchard that we planted, it started blooming in September, and it bloomed all fall, all winter. And right around late September, I started noticing a bunch of smaller insects in the cover crop. Insects started getting larger, and then I started noticing all these birds, little tiny birds that were feeding on the insects, and the birds started getting larger. And essentially what you had evolved. We created this ecosystem in the middle of this dead zone. The whole area was dried up, but we had this, I guess it's kind of like if you ever watched The Wizard of Oz and when it goes colored.
Yeah.
That's what it was like driving into this almond orchard. And, it's a positive thing for the bees. I think it's something that as a bee industry, we should absolutely support. And it's important to talk about CRP land in the Midwest too. I think how we balance the food requirements of a growing population globally and maintain habitat. I think the idea of actually farming habitat is something we have a strong track record of, and needs to be more of a priority. Bees are the canary in the coal mine, and we're struggling for forage. And I look at all the problems with CCD, and I think at the root of it, it's a nutrition issue. I remember talking with Eric Musson at UC Davis. This is when I first got back into bees, and he was like, never forget that, you're going to need 50 pounds of pollen per colony, and you're going to need about 100 pounds of honey to meet your nutritional requirements. And you look at, especially in California on a dry year like we're having right now, getting that quantity of pollen and nectar is going to be, problematic, if not impossible. And even in places like the Midwest too, having diversity of pollens, having access, it's a limiting variable, I think, for the commercial bee industry.
Well, the forage that they're providing on the edge of and between rows looks like, and from your experience, is really a positive thing. Do you see that expanding at all?
I do. Yeah, I do. It's just a matter of, I think, beekeepers asking for it more. But like everything in California agriculture comes down to water, and, it's additional water utilization. And so that's the tough one. But if guys have access to the water, I think it's a win-win. I think it was John Miller put out an article about a month ago talking about how this cover crop also helps with nematodes.
Yep.
And so from just a raw agronomy perspective too, it makes sense. It's a win-win-win.
One of the other things going on with the almond crop, of course, is the development of that almond variety that doesn't need bees.
Right.
They're self-fertile. Do you see that expanding at all?
I see it. There's two main varieties. Of course, the Independence is the main one. Shasta is another variety that's come on the market. Ironically, at our facility right now, we're almost surrounded by Independence. There's a cruel irony in that. But what we're finding is that, I think initially the initial push for Independence was two main motivators. You don't need bees, and you only have to harvest once. Well, what are we finding with Independence? Well, actually, we're finding that, stocking bees for pollination does help. You can probably reduce your ratio. But now all these guys are doing their winter harvest because the nuts aren't coming off the trees that effectively. So you still need bees, and you're still harvesting twice. Is the reality, and we're seeing kind of a pushback. A lot of guys that I've seen that planted it have the opportunity to plant new varieties, aren't going back to it. But in these smaller parcels, we're close to town, so you have these 5, 10, 20 acre parcels. Getting people to come in and harvest is a bit problematic. So just logistically, I do understand it from, getting in and getting your nuts up one time in the fall. But it's still a new variety too. And so how does it taste, shape, color? These things are still working their way out. I think they were thinking initially that they were planning on getting a non-parental pricing for that, and that hasn't taken shape. One interesting story I can share with you about new varieties is in Houston, where I'm at, there's a Doherty nursery, and it's a very successful nursery. They've developed a new variety of nut called Bennett, which is compatible with nonpareil. And I've been fortunate to pollinate their nursery orchard. And this kind of goes the other way, where they've created a tree that's actually very attractive to bees. I'm seeing a lot. I've picked up more clients that are planting this variety too, and it puts out a tremendous amount of nectar. And so bees just gravitate towards it. And that's kind of an interesting story. That's kind of below the radar too. So in terms of everybody planting self-pollinating almonds and ruining the bee industry and things like that, I really don't foresee that happening. Especially when you really start doing the math on acreage. We're going to be at 1.5 million acres statewide. For whatever, there's still a lot of areas in California that you could plant even more almonds if you wanted to. So I think overproduction is probably a bigger threat than self-pollinating almonds at this point.
And the same thing for the mechanical pollination?
Exactly.
I don't know, man. The mechanical pollination, I just can't see producing a bee being cheaper than actually growing bees, and having to service these little things. And I don't know. Maybe I just don't understand it enough, but I just don't see that being viable.
I was doing some research. We're getting away from Sue Bee here a little bit.
A little bit.
Well, it's a beekeeper conversation. We got to take 2 left turns, another right turn before we get back.
There you go.
That's all over.
But I was doing some research on Furman Pollen Company that produces a lot of the pollen for the mechanical. They produce 2 tons of pollen a season, which is, I can't imagine 2 tons of pollen. But anyway, back to Sue Bee. And you did a little bit of the history. We've talked about the brands, where you're set up all over all 50 states, and how you get paid and the value to you. But one of the questions that I might ask is, if you got a problem as a business, your beekeeping business, does Sue Bee offer counseling, advice, anything like that? Is there anybody that can answer the question that you can't find an answer to?
That's a good question. I've never asked for assistance. I possibly. Just my experience with beekeeping and the bee industry as a business, it's a very informal business. Sioux is a great network of beekeepers to tap into. And so I'm fortunate to have a pretty good Rolodex of people I can call and ask questions to, as a result of being a Sioux member. But in terms of a formalized process, I'm not aware of any.
But it sounds like you've got a good informal network that...
Yeah.
Without having to go through any chain of command or anything, there's 4 people you can call up and say, "Hey, what's going on? I can't, I haven't seen this before of you, and what do you do about it?" sort of thing. So, well, that's probably works better, actually.
Right. Yeah.
You got people whose bees are putting food on their table; they're going to have the right answer.
Or no, not what to do.
Probably even better.
Is more important than knowing what to do sometimes. So.
Well, what haven't we asked you about Sue Bee? What does the world need to know about Sue Bee honey that we haven't talked about yet?
I just really go back to the consistency. It really is. How many businesses do you know that have that long track record? And it's we talked about potential other areas of growth and other things that we can do. But sometimes the hardest thing to do is to stay focused, and to have such a narrow focus over such a prolonged period of time and be successful at it is really an interesting story in and of itself.
You must like being a part of it.
Yeah, it's been helpful to the business, and there's just so many unknowns as a beekeeper. You put your whole livelihood on trucks and haul them across the United States, and under not the best of conditions. Trust truck drivers to take care of your bees, and trust growers to take care of your bees, and rely on weird market conditions, and to have something that you can at least count on is psychologically and fiscally important.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to guess with as many colonies as you're running, you're probably selling your tanker loads of honey when they come and pick it up.
Well, yeah, we don't. Some guys do tankers. What we've done now is primarily totes,
Okay.
and
So it's-
that's so we can put, I think, was it 18 totes per truck, so we can load a truck in like 30 minutes. And then
So how many pounds is a tote or gallons?
I think it's about 3.5 barrels. So we're looking at almost 2,000 pounds. And there's 2 different tote sizes. Yeah, so even draining our holding tank when we extract, that used to be a nightmare with barrels. And now that we've converted to these totes, we can drain our holding tank much more quickly and
efficiently.
I hate barrels. Oh man, the clamps. Yeah, the clamps,
Oh, yeah.
and they never seem to work exactly the way you want them to. And then when you have these totes too, it's much more sanitary. It's really, I think, the totes are what you're going to see the majority of the industry pivot to. I think.
Do the totes, the physical tote itself, belong to you, or does it belong to Sioux Bee?
Belongs to Sioux.
Okay, so they bring the totes, you fill them up, they come and get them.
Right. And that's another big thing too. In North Dakota, getting barrels, is not easy. I mean, getting anybody to do anything in North Dakota is so remote is hard. I've got a lot of stories about trying to fix my basement that I won't bore you with, but
Okay.
but just having that as getting your packaging materials delivered when you need them too, and not having to sit on multi-year supply of barrels and things like that too, and just we don't have a very big warehouse. We like to run a pretty lean ship, and to be able to get things when you need them and get them out of your hair when you need them is of extreme value.
That work the same way with your wax? Do you process your wax and put it in blocks, or how does that
Yes.
work with?
Yeah, so
So
we
you-
have a Cowan wax oven, and then we put our cappings in there and melt them into, typically it's about a 35-pound block.
Yeah, okay. And then they come and just pick up the blocks.
Right.
Okay.
You can, when you're shipping your honey, if you're organized enough, you can include your wax too.
So one of the things we haven't talked about yet was, and I saw on your website, the Soldiers Angels.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about that program?
Yeah, it's we started November 19, and essentially it's people that are baking for our soldiers overseas. I think part of the reason why Sioux decided to support it, it's in concert with our values to support our military. As a beekeeper, we get to experience a lot of freedoms. I get to kind of roam the countryside at will, and we need to acknowledge why we have those freedoms and who fights for those. And so there's a lot of volunteers throughout the United States that are baking, and Sioux saw this occurring and wanted to support it. And part of it too, just from the biology of it, honey is hygroscopic. So when you bake with honey, it retains moisture. And so these people can bake in the United States, send the product overseas, and when it gets over there, it's still great cookies, cupcakes, whatever they're doing. And that works out really well. Last October, I had the good fortune of actually baking some muffins with someone. We sent them overseas. So when you buy Sioux Honey, you support this organization. We're providing funds to them. I know some of the beekeeping families have baked, signed postcards, sent some good wishes overseas. And that was
great.
That was done to, when we launched our new Beeks line of honeys, we had some promotional things. That was one of them. If you want, we also did a thing called Little Free Pantry, was another promotional thing that we did too, which I participated in directly in Modesto. And that's just a spinoff of Little Free Library. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
You live in Washington? Yeah, they're probably around if you start looking for them. In a lot of neighborhoods, people build in their front yard a little thing that you can put books in.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, that's the little free library. And so you see them in a lot of neighborhoods where you drop off books, pick up books.
Yeah.
And as people in Missouri had an idea, like, well, let's do a little free pantry where we'll create the same thing and people will stock with, stable pantry items. And we looked around California and we didn't have any in Central California. So We did one in Los Banos, Modesto, and Fresno. And a lot of that's just born out of the idea that when people look at Sioux, they think of it as like a corporation, and it's really a collection of beekeepers that are active in their community, and that I think that was essentially the message that we were trying to get across, as well as contributing to our communities.
I think we did a buzz on that program a while back when you first started it. So if folks want to know more, they can go to Bee Culture's website or your website and find out more, who's involved, how you get involved. So yeah, it's a good program. And,
it's living in the Central Valley. I mean, we're the amount of agricultural commodities coming out of here is just phenomenal. To have any kind of food scarcity in the breadbasket of the world is inexcusable.
Well, I think we've covered Sioux bee. I think the world going to know a lot more about Sioux bee now because of all this. I certainly have learned a lot, and almonds, a nice mix. I think we'll have to get you back and talk more about bees and leave Sioux bee out in the warehouse and get you talking about the rest of your beekeeping operation one day.
Oh, I'd be happy
that would
to do
be fun. We really appreciate you being on the Beekeeping Today podcast with us, talking about Sioux bee and all the things that you do. And look forward to having you back sometime.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It's been fun, Matt. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. I was really glad to have Matt on the show. I know a little bit more about the Sioux Honey cooperative now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what Sioux does going down the road with the way that imports are going to be looking. All of that stuff that we've been hearing about, FDA clamping down and looking at contracts and all sorts of things that are going to, one would hope, enhance commercial honey production in the U.S. rather than looking at so many imports. And that can only help Sioux, it can only help U.S. beekeepers. And I missed it again this year. I wanted to be in the almonds when they were blooming, but it was good enough to almost be there, and I enjoyed that part of the discussion too. So
yeah,
it was good to talk to Matt.
Yeah, it was really good, and I was very glad to have him on and look forward to having him back on the show at a future date. Well, that about wraps up for this podcast. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave a review if you want, or wherever you download and stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their sponsorship of the Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at www.globalpatties.com. And finally, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on this show. Feel free to send us questions and comments at questions@beekeepingtodaypodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Anything else we should mention, Kim?
Well, I'll just reinforce that question, Jeff. The more the merrier, and if you got something, give us a shout. We'll see. If we can't answer it, we'll find somebody who can.
Absolutely. And speaking of questions, we have some questions that came in after our beginning beekeeping series that we will address on our upcoming show as well. So stay tuned.
Oh, good. Okay. Good. Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot. Keep your hands clean.
Yep. Wash your hands, Jeff. Get some rest.
Bye-bye.